Hey everyone, and welcome as we continue our study through the New Testament, looking at the the New Testament church, and we're studying this in chronological order. And we're still in First Thessalonians 2. This is Paul's letter to the Thessalonian church after he was not able to get there and go back and see them, and he gets a report from Timothy. And so we're going to see that a little bit today. Today's going to be 1 Thessalonians 2:17 verses 3:13. So I'm not going to read all this one again. Like I said, I'm not going to read the really long ones on this because it just takes too much time, and I don't like being read to, and for especially a lengthy time. And I think it does better whenever with the longer sections that you all can take the time to look through these and read these on your own. So today we're going to look at this one. And again, I'll start this one off because I usually do this at the end. But if you haven't subscribed to our channel, go ahead and do so because we put these reports out or these lessons out daily. And that way you get the notifications, the alerts. And also, if you find these helpful, I ask that you share them because that helps us spread our ministry, spread what we're trying to do, and reach the people that we're trying to reach. So, as always, I appreciate everyone who takes the time to listen to these and go through these and comment and give suggestions and ask questions and that kind of stuff. So I really do appreciate that. So with to this one, 1 Thessalonians 2:17 through 3:13, this is Timothy's good report about the church. So take the time to read this, and then we'll go through the notes. So what we're looking at here, Paul describes, and we've kind of talked about this a little bit already, his unplanned departure from Thessalonica. This was in Acts 17:10. And he kind of describes it as depriving the new believers of their spiritual parents, because Paul typically would spend a lengthier time with the new churches um, to help build them up, strengthen them, and he wasn't able to do that in this case. And so does let them know, hey, I hate this, but my absence and not neglect, and as evidence for that, Paul attempts to return to the church. Um, Several times, but and lets them know that this separation is not intentional. He does not want to be separated from them. But Paul made repeated attempts to return to Thessalonica to the Thessalonica church, but he just was not able to. And so, despite the opposition of Satan, both Timothy and Paul were eventually able to visit the church again, just not in the time frame that they wanted to. So after, we'll see this, and we saw this after preaching in Berea. Paul departed from Macedonia and he sailed to Athens, and he instructed Silas and Timothy to join him soon. Timothy returned. He did return to Thessalonica, but Paul's anxiety for the church had intensified. He really wanted to, I understand this. It's like he really wanted to know, like, how was the church doing? How was the church doing? He was afraid for them. And part of the things that he talks about in this is the suffering for the faith that the Thessalonians had gone through. And he lets them know it's part of the Christian life. He's like, I told you when I was with you that this is going to be part of the Christian life. And so he's understanding, but lets them know and reassures them in that, but still lets them know, hey, this is part of it. But in that, Paul was concerned that Satan, who he calls the tempter, had undermined the Thessalonian faith. He was afraid that he hadn't spent enough time with them, their faith wasn't strong enough, and that all of his work would have been for nothing, because that the devil would have won out in winning them back over. And so Paul wrote First Thessalonians right after Timothy had returned from there and given them this good report about the church. And Timothy's report provided the good news about how the Thessalonians, how their strong their faith was, how strong their love for one another was, and for other people, and how steadfast and hopeful they were. And so Paul had been distressed about that, especially by his present circumstances, and he was just deeply, deeply concerned for the church. So this letter, is to praise them and let them know how happy he is that they had stayed strong in the faith and had or persevered through all this persecution and those things there. And so he was relieved. He was very relieved. He lets them know he was relieved to learn that they would remain strong and were standing firm in the Lord, even with all the suffering that they were going through. And so he lets them know and emphasizes that a characteristic of a church was their love for one another and for the members of God's family. And so he lets them know that, and he praises them for that. And then he goes on to pray that their love will grow and overflow towards not only the members of the church, but those outside the Christian community, and even in the face of persecution. It's like love those who are persecuting you, those type of things. And so he encourages them. He praises them in that. And so he's just really, this is one of those letters where like usually Paul's getting on to people. It's like, hey, you need to fix this, and he's like, no, y'all are doing awesome. Wonderful. It's wonderful to hear all these wonderful things that you are doing, and then it's reaching me. And so in the final part of this prayer that Paul is writing, he prays that their hearts, their conduct, and their moral resolve might be strong, blameless, and holy, because he understands that the persecution is going to continue. He wants them to continue to strengthen in their faith, and to continue to grow closer to Christ, and be a stronger church. And so he's just encouraging them. He's letting them know, hey, it's wonderful how y'all are doing. Y'all are doing awesome, and I just encourage you to do just even better, and continue to grow. And so that's what we see in this section of the letter. So as I said, like a lot of this is a lengthier one read, but again, a lot of the notes. It's in this first section, or this first part of Thessalonians. There's a lot of the, I don't say repeating, but similar themes, as he kind of just says, hey, lets them know about how wonderful they're doing, and praising them for their faith, encouraging them in their faith, and those type of things, letting them know that, hey, I got Timothy's back with me. I've got his report. Y'all are doing awesome, and that kind of stuff that we're going to see. And so we'll continue on into this into this tomorrow. And this is he talks about that, talking about living to please God. And then he gives them next week we'll get into that, and talks about the hope of the resurrection and a little bit more encouragement. And then after that we'll go into Second Thessalonians, the second letter that he wrote to them as well, about their faith and the different things and the return of Christ. So it's going to be an interesting study as we go through this through the next week. But as always, I've said everything in the beginning, but I just really do appreciate everyone who takes the time to watch these and record these. I hope they're helpful. I learned from them. I hope you're learning from them. But as always, more than anything, I really appreciate everyone who takes the time to watch them. Thank you.